Hey there YouTube, I'm here today to talk about a phenomenon I see on other videos, doing videos that talk about how somebody has built a $200 gaming PC or a $100 gaming PC. You know, some of them are okay, but some of them we really gotta talk, alright? And to do this, I'm going to skewer, well, myself. So, a few months ago, I got a PC for $80. It is a Dell Optiplex 7010 with an Intel i5 3570 processor. That's a 3.4 gigahertz processor, 4 cores. This machine was picked specifically because of the processor. I was weighing whether to get a budget gaming PC that was either a Ryzen or G4560. The 3570 compares nicely to both of them. It's a little bit older actually than my old setup, but it's actually faster. The reason I want to talk about the fact that I'm saying it's $80 is because, well, it's not $80. I came across this video a while back. This is one of the more egregious examples of a guy that built a Hackintosh for $200. And if I remember right, he got an HP Elite. He got extra RAM by just saying, well, I had this in the shop. And he had an NVIDIA, and he said, I had it in the shop. He spent $170 on the PC, another $20 on another part, and then he just puts in a $180 part in here and $120 worth of RAM in here, and it's just $200. No, that's a $500 PC. But enough about this other guy's computer. Let's take a look at mine. So, we're going to open it up in a second, but let's just look at the front right here. We have what looks like the front of a pretty stock Dell machine. It's a mid-tower. This is what you want if you're looking for a used Dell and trying to save some money on a budget build. The only thing that looks out of place, of course, is that card reader. Now, this is a cheap Dynex that I got from Best Buy several years ago. I don't even think you can get this one. But if you were looking for a new one, you're going to pay somewhere around $30 to $35. When I pop open the case, the first thing I want to point out is the power supply. The stock Dell power supply supplied just barely enough power for the stock configuration. I have an EVGA 600 watt power supply here. Nothing fancy, just the base model 600 watt power supply. You don't want to get a used power supply whenever you're doing this. There's a certain shelf life to these things whenever you're running high amperage equipment like this. So you're talking about maybe around $55 for that. Next item I want to point out is the hard drive. Now, this computer did ship with a 500 gig Western Digital Blue that was Dell branded. And while that would have worked for a budget build, I already had and was using almost all of a 2 terabyte hard drive. Now, I already have this, and therein lies the problem. If I didn't have this and I was planning on having a lot of things stored on my hard drive, I would want to get one. And this is another item that you don't want to buy used because, again, there's a certain life to these. Whenever it's a spinning disc like this, the ball bearings, everything else starts to wear out after a while. So you really want to buy new. So you're talking about, in 2018, early 2018, about $60. We'll get to the rest of the storage now, and I'll give you a little background on this. One of the drives is a 250 gig SSD. Those are running about $75. And I've got Windows 10 installed on that. Thankfully, the computer shipped with a Windows key that would work just fine with Windows 10 Professional, so I didn't have any extra expense there. I forget how much it is, like $150, and you can go through some more shady sources to get OEM numbers, but I don't suggest that. The other drive is actually a caching store for the hard drive, and what is that? Well, on the hard drive, the 2 terabyte hard drive, I have Ubuntu long-term support, actually KDE Neon installed, and it uses the full 2 terabytes. And what it can do then is it uses something called bcache to store any frequently used files on the SSD. So for things like booting up and starting up and logging in and all that, we're going at SSD speed, and it just transparently handles storing to that. That drive added another $50 to the initial build. And finally, on the internals, we get to the graphics card. And this is where I get on a soapbox. I bought this used NVIDIA GTX 750 Ti 2 or 3 years ago. and I paid about $50 for it. This thing came out in 2014. Whenever I've checked prices today for used graphics cards, it's anywhere between $50 and $80. As many people know, the cryptocurrency fad, if you will, has caused the price of graphics cards to go sky high. So you might be able to get something like a 960 or a 1050 or a 1030 for around that price too. And I wish you luck on that, because that would be wonderful. But we're going to say $60 for the graphics card. Now, by my math, I'm already up to $420. And if you're going to spend another $20 on a controller and a $20 on a wireless keyboard to hook it up to a TV to use as the ultimate console killing machine, then you're doing pretty well already. But if you're going to hook this up to a monitor, use it as a computer, and you don't have anything yet, let's say you're a teenager and you're trying to build a machine that you can use for schoolwork and for playing games, you're not done yet. One of the number one mistakes that people make is not having a hard drive to back up to. Ideally, what you want is either a cloud service or a drive that you take out of your home. That way, if your house burns down, you're not trying to spend an arm and a leg to recover all your old photos of birthday parties or whatever. Here we've got a Western Digital MyBook 2 terabyte drive. Depending on where you get it, it'll run you anywhere between $90 and $130. So let's say $100. Now, unless you're some hardcore gamer or you just have a need for wireless equipment, I suggest getting a wired keyboard and mouse just to save money. And if you're not a hardcore gamer, you're not going to need anything fancy. You're not going to need to worry about bounce back or anything like that if you're just typing casually, especially if you're just doing things like term papers. You can get an Amazon Basics keyboard and mouse combo for about $15. I've got a Microsoft Comfort mouse, which probably brings it up to more like $25. Now let's talk audio. Now this was an area where I feel like I did save some money. Instead of getting computer speakers, dedicated computer speakers that is, I decided to get separate speakers and amp. And at some point I'm going to get a better amp, but for now what I've got are a set of Dayton Audio bookshelf speakers, B652s. They run about $35. And powering those is a Leppy LP-2024A Plus digital amplifier. That'll run you about $30. So you're talking $60 here. If you compare it to, say, a Logitech speaker set for about $60, there's really no comparison in my opinion. They sound a lot better. And if you spend more on a better amp, or if you feel comfortable using a soldering iron to modify one of these amps, I don't, at least not yet, then you can get better quality audio for a lot less. And last but not least, the monitors. In the middle of my desk, I have a 22-inch Mag Inavision monitor. I think it's about 7 or 8 years old. It was probably about $200 when it was new. Nowadays, you can get a 22-inch 1080p for about $110. The monitor to the left, I got for $50. It's a used Dell. It's got slight damage. Wouldn't use it for editing pictures, but I will use it to read email or whatever. Or to, as I'm doing now, have Audacity running while I'm looking at my timeline on my video editor. So together, I'd say about $160 for both monitors. And thankfully, those both came with cables, so I didn't have to spend extra there. As I was looking over my list, I noticed something, which is that I completely left out RAM. And this is another biggie. Right now, there is a RAM shortage, especially if you get a newer PC and you need DDR4. Almost every device that comes out of a factory right now that needs RAM is using the same supply of DDR4 RAM. And apparently manufacturers didn't compensate for that. Now this machine, I'm using DDR3 because that's what it uses, and my old workstation used DDR3. And this is another thing that I just happen to have. So I went looking on eBay looking for just some basic Kingston or other similar 16 gigs of RAM, and I found 2 sticks of DDR3 was running around an average of $80. So whenever I'm looking at the price of this $80 PC, I've got the machine itself, I've got the card reader, power supply, drives, RAM, and graphics card, and that runs me right at $500. And this is why I have a problem with these videos that try to convince you that you can build a $200 gaming PC. Now, whenever they build a gaming PC that has a list of all the parts they use, I'm fine with that. It's whenever they say, well, and then I'm going to throw in this GTX 1050 that I have sitting on my workbench, and I had 16 gigs of RAM from this other build, and I'm just going to put those in, and it's still $200. No, it's not $200. It's $500. Now, if this is your first PC and you're just hooking it up to a TV and you've already got your TV and you're going to buy a controller and a keyboard, that's great. You've spent $500 on what is essentially a gaming PC, and to be fair, you're probably not going to have a 2 terabyte hard drive. If it comes with a 500 gig hard drive, you're going to be able to save that money, and you're probably not going to have a backup drive unless you're paranoid that Steam is going to have something go wrong with it, because, you know, you can always re-download all the games anyway. But let's say you're building a PC and this is your first desktop PC. That $500 still doesn't get you a full PC. Now, you might not need a backup solution. You might not need a drive that you can put in a lockbox somewhere or whatever. So you can save $100 there. But I've added in $100 for a drive. I've added in the keyboard and mouse, and amp and speakers, so that I'm not using a crummy set of computer speakers. And I've added in my monitors. And I'm not even adding in things like printers and things like a graphics tablet and things like that. Leaving those things out, I'm already at $835. I am at 10% of the price that I have been bragging about. I don't have an $80 PC. I have an $830 used PC. That might seem foolish, but I have a PC that does everything I want, and I'm very happy with it. So, do I feel like I'm ripped off? No. Do I feel like I have been deceiving anyone? Maybe myself. But listen, guys, if you're still out there making those videos, trying to get those clickbaity titles in, I built a $50 gaming PC for kids. Stop. You're not fooling anyone. Thank you very much for your time.